Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're tackling a massive, foundational challenge for anyone looking to build a truly resilient power system, engineering a rock-solid 48-volt off-grid battery bank. You know, if you rely on solar power, the real test of your system doesn't actually happen at high noon. It happens at 2 in the morning. When the sun goes down, those panels go to sleep, and your batteries are completely on their own. So we're going to use real, no-nonsense engineering math today to calculate exactly what it takes to support a 5 kilowatt-hour load straight through the night.
Okay, let's dive right into this. A super common starting point for people is just basic division. They'll ask, hey, is 104 amp hours enough for a 5 kilowatt-hour night load? Because, if you take a standard 5,000 watt-hour load, say you're running your fridge, some security cameras, a router, maybe a fan overnight, and you just divide it by a 48-volt system, you get roughly 104 amp hours. So you might think, awesome, I'll just buy a 104 amp hour battery and I am totally covered. But is that basic theoretical math actually enough to get you through the night safely?
Section 1. The battery sizing myth. Why 104 amp hours is a trap.
Look, I've got to acknowledge right out of the gate that the basic calculation we just did, it's technically correct on a purely mathematical level. But stopping there is exactly why so many off-grid storage systems fail early. Designing a system using only that simple division is a massive trap, mostly because it completely ignores the harsh realities of how electrical systems actually operate out in the field. That number right there, 104.2 amp hours, is nothing more than a theoretical minimum. It's what you need if batteries delivered power flawlessly, if wires had absolutely zero resistance, and if every single component operated with 100% perfect efficiency. But out in the real world, we're dealing with operational losses, heat, and strict chemistry limitations. We absolutely have to account for these real-world taxes, or you're going to end up severely undersizing your storage.
Moving to Section 2, the Inverter Efficiency Tax, accounting for real-world losses.
So here's the deal. Batteries and inverters just do not deliver energy perfectly. When an inverter takes direct current from your battery and converts it into alternating current for your household appliances, it has to do actual work, and that work costs energy. Let's walk through the actual math here. Step 1, we start with our intended 5,000 watt-hour load. Step 2, we've got to factor in a realistic pure sine wave inverter efficiency. A really high-quality inverter usually operates at around 90 to 94% efficiency, so let's use a very realistic 92% for our calculation. Step 3, to find our actual real-world requirement, we divide our 5,000 watt-hour load by 0.92.
Boom, and that gives us our new, corrected requirement, 5,435 watt-hours. Do you see the difference there? Your battery doesn't just need to supply the 5,000 watt-hours your appliances are asking for, it has to supply an additional 435 watt-hours. That extra energy is completely consumed by the inverter itself, lost to heat, conversion inefficiencies, and just general operating overhead. If you don't plan for this efficiency tax, your system will literally fall short every single night.
All right, Section 3. Depth of discharge matters. The unusable bottom of the tank.
So the crucial point here is that you've got to think of your battery like a gas tank, but with a major catch. You absolutely cannot use the unusable bottom of the tank. Just because a battery has a certain label capacity printed on the side of the box does not mean you actually have access to all of it. Let's clearly define what this means. Depth of discharge, or DoD, is the percentage of a battery's total capacity that is actually used during a cycle. The deeper you discharge a battery, the harder it is on those internal components. This directly dictates your battery's lifespan. And critically, your safe depth of discharge limit varies wildly depending on the exact chemical makeup of the battery you're using. Deep, nightly cycling will absolutely destroy certain battery chemistries in a matter of months if you push them too far past their limits.
Which brings us to Section 4, Lithium-4 versus lead acid, the chemistry showdown.
When you're engineering a system to handle heavy loads night after night, your choice of battery chemistry is probably your most critical decision. Let's compare lithium iron phosphate to traditional lead acid, specifically AGM batteries, to see how depth of discharge completely changes the game. If you want a lead acid or AGM battery to actually survive a reasonable lifespan, you really shouldn't discharge it below 50% of its total capacity on a regular basis. Think about that. That means half of the battery you just paid for and lugged into your battery shed is essentially dead weight. You get 50% usable capacity, and the remaining 50% just has to sit there as a permanent reserve just to keep the battery healthy.
Now, what's really interesting about this next slide is how dramatically the math shifts with lithium iron phosphate, or LiFePO4.
Lithium safely lets you use up to 80 or even 90% of the tank without causing severe damage to its overall lifespan. You literally only have to leave a tiny 10% reserve at the bottom. You are getting so much more workable energy out of the exact same physical footprint.
Let's put this into perspective and look at the final required battery sizes for our 5,435 watt-hour load once we actually factor in those specific DoD limits. If we use LiFePO4, calculating for a 90% depth of discharge, we need roughly a 6 kilowatt-hour battery bank. Very manageable, right? But if we use AGM with its strict 50% limit, we are forced to buy and install an almost 11 kilowatt-hour battery bank to survive the exact same night. The AGM bank has to be nearly double the physical size, double the weight, and heavily overpurchased just to handle the load sustainably.
Let's move to Section 5 and see how this builds. Why 48 volts wins, the physics of continuous current.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why large off-grid systems use a 48-volt architecture rather than 12-volt or 24-volt systems. It all comes down to the physics of continuous current. Let's look at a continuous 2,000-watt load pulling from the battery. On a 48-volt system, that load draws a highly manageable 41.7 amps. But look at the 12-volt system for the exact same 2,000-watt load. It's pulling a staggering 160-plus amps continuously. Pushing 160 amps through copper wires for hours on end is just incredibly demanding.
Because remember, electrical current creates heat. By bumping the system voltage up to 48 volts, we slash the continuous current draw by a massive 75%. Lower current means you can safely use smaller, much cheaper cables. It means significantly less heat generation across your entire system. And most importantly, it prevents the severe thermal stress that leads to melted terminals, catastrophic voltage sags, and those incredibly frustrating premature inverter shutdowns right when you need power the most.
All right, Section 6, Essential Battery Bank Safety, Taming Massive Stored Energy.
Okay, let's get real for a second and shift from the engineering math to the actual physical dangers involved here. A 48-volt battery bank might technically be classified as low voltage by electricians, but do not let that fool you into a false sense of security. The sheer volume of energy stored in a 48-volt lithium bank is massive. If a tool drops across the positive and negative terminals, or if a wire chafes and causes a short circuit, that bank is going to deliver a massive instantaneous fault current. Without proper protection, we're talking about the potential for blinding arc flashes, literally vaporized copper cables, molten metal spraying out, and severe electrical fires that are incredibly hard to contain. Because of all that, this safety checklist, it is absolutely non-negotiable. Before a system is ever powered on, it must have, first, proper catastrophic overcurrent protection, like a fast-acting Class T or a mega fuse mounted as close to the battery terminal as physically possible. Second, correctly sized cabling rated for the maximum continuous current and fault conditions. Third, securely fastened, mechanically crimped lugs, because a loose connection is a hot connection. And fourth, a high-amp battery disconnect switch, so you can safely isolate all that energy during maintenance.
To bring this all together, I really want to highlight this core philosophy from our source material. Battery sizing should always prioritize usable energy, not marketing numbers printed on the case. This perfectly summarizes the difference between the theoretical, basic math that everyone initially uses and actual, real-world off-grid engineering. You aren't just buying a label, you're engineering a system to reliably deliver usable watt-hours after the inverter takes its tax and without draining past the chemistry's safe limits.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I'll leave you with this question to chew on. Are you designing your system for theory or for reality? Next time you look at a battery spec sheet, remember to calculate for the inverter tax, remember the depth of discharge, and remember the physics of continuous current. I'm really curious to hear from you. What chemistry are you going to use for your own night loads? And how much usable capacity do you actually need? Thanks for hanging out with me on this deep dive, and I highly encourage you to apply these real-world taxes to your own system builds.